Hello everyone, day 19 of the Undegreed journey started the same way it usually does, with my DSA lecture. At this point, we've already completed most of the core data structures and algorithms, so the focus now is on solving and understanding problems. The first problem we discussed was same tree. This question asks something very fundamental. Given two binary trees, determine whether they are structurally identical and have the same node values. In simple terms, both trees must match perfectly, same shape, same values, node by node. Right after that, we move to another problem called Subtree of Another Tree. At first glance, it feels different, but conceptually, it builds on the same idea. Here, instead of comparing two trees completely, the task is to check whether a smaller tree exists somewhere inside a larger tree as an exact match. That's why the core logic behind both problems ends up being the same, comparing two trees for equality. We also briefly discussed how binary trees can be constructed from preorder and inorder traversals, and how recursion naturally fits these problems because each tree is a smaller version of itself at every node. We then discussed another important problem, the diameter of a binary tree. This question is often confused with finding the height of a tree, but they are not the same. Height measures the longest path from a node down to a leaf, while diameter measures the longest path between any two nodes in the tree, and that path doesn't have to pass through the root. The common link between height and diameter is recursion, but the key difference is that diameter needs information from both the left and right subtrees at the same time. After the lecture ended, it was time to code everything directly on the LeetCode terminal. I started with the same tree problem and implemented the recursive approach. If both nodes are null, they match. If one is null and the other isn't, they don't, and if values differ, the trees are different. Otherwise, we recursively check the left and right subtrees. Next, I moved on to Subtree of Another Tree, and this is where something interesting happens. The exact same tree comparison logic is reused. The only difference is that instead of running it once, we run it at every node of the main tree. At each node, we ask, does the subtree starting here match the target tree? That's why the core code remains the same. One problem is a direct extension of the other. After that, I continued with a new LeetCode Quest that was recently introduced. There are 36 levels in total, and I had already cleared the first level yesterday by solving array-based questions like concatenation of arrays, shuffling arrays, and finding maximum consecutive ones. In total, I solved 5 questions yesterday. LeetCode also recently refactored their stats, and seeing that I've solved 220 questions this year and ranked above 95.5% of users was honestly overwhelming. It was a strong reminder that consistency compounds, and I fully intend to keep this going next year as well. You'll see screenshots of my submissions right after this. That wrapped up the data structures part of the day. Next came my daily language practice, and today's focus was Spanish. I extended my streak to day 346, putting me very close to a full year, which honestly feels great. During this session, I learned new words like tampoco meaning neither, and llamas, which can be used to mean never, similar to nunca. I also picked up vocabulary such as colega, colleague, empresa, company, secretaria, secretary, and disponible or available. Instead of just memorizing meanings, I practiced forming sentences with each word, which made the learning feel more practical and helped with long-term retention. I also completed all my daily quests and earned my December quest badge on Duolingo, which was a nice bonus. After that, it was time for the gym. Today was a push day. For chest, I did 3 sets each of flat barbell bench press, incline barbell bench press, and machine chest flies. For shoulders, I followed up with 3 sets each of rear delt flies and cable lateral raises. Overall, it was a solid, disciplined session, no shortcuts, just consistent work. Next up was machine learning practice. I haven't been very consistent lately, so I decided to revise the basics by focusing on linear regression, the cost function, gradient function, and gradient descent, using the Foggy Hill analogy I've mentioned before. I first used Gemini to refresh the concepts, then went to Kaggle and picked a dataset with CGPA and placement exam marks. I opened VS Code, imported the CSV file and required libraries, defined my training variables, and started coding. I began with the cost function to measure prediction error, followed by the gradient function to determine how to reduce that error. Then I implemented gradient descent, which iteratively updates parameters using both. When I plotted the data and regression line with matplotlib, the results were highly scattered and the error was large. After getting some help from Gemini, I adjusted the learning rate, increased iterations, and made a few tweaks. The model eventually converged, but the output still wasn't great due to high variance in the dataset. CGPA and placement marks didn't have a strong relationship. Even so, the model found the best fit average line, with a final weight of around 4.1, which means that for every 1 point of increase in CGPA, the placement exam marks increased by 4.1. It wasn't a perfect model, because of high variance in the data, but it was a solid learning exercise, and I'll use a better dataset next time. After coding, I moved on to my daily reading session. I'm currently reading Einstein, His Life and Universe by Walter Isaacson. I read about how Einstein recognized a fundamental flaw in the Newtonian framework while developing relativity. Instead of building on a weak base, he tore it down and rebuilt the model from scratch. At the time, many scientists believed in ether as a medium for light, but Einstein removed it entirely, changing the way physics was understood. In 1905, Einstein published multiple revolutionary papers on the photoelectric effect, Brownian motion, special relativity, and the equation E equals MC². This equation showed how mass could be converted into enormous energy, enough to power entire cities. That single year reshaped modern science forever, even though some scientists like Poincare continued to believe in ether and never fully accepted relativity. Finally, I moved on to my quant preparation. I'm currently studying mathematical proofs, so I revised 3 core methods: direct proof, proof by induction, and proof by contradiction. These methods build the kind of logical thinking needed for quant, algorithms, and higher mathematics. Direct proof is the most straightforward approach. You start from known definitions or established results and move step by step to the conclusion using clean, logical reasoning. It's best used when the statement naturally follows from existing facts, such as algebraic identities or number properties. Proof by induction is more powerful and works differently. You first prove a base case, then assume the statement is true for some step, n, and use that assumption to prove it for n+1. This creates a chain that proves the statement for all valid values. Induction is often called the king of proofs because it lets you prove infinitely many cases using a finite process, making it ideal for sequences and recurrence-based problems. Proof by contradiction takes an indirect route. You assume the opposite of what you want to prove and show that it leads to an impossible or false result. When a contradiction appears, the original statement must be true. This method is especially useful when direct reasoning doesn't work. In short, direct proofs move forward logically, induction proves statements over infinite sets step by step, and contradiction proves truth by eliminating all alternatives. After revising these ideas, I started solving problems on my own. I made mistakes, restarted, and worked through them again, because that's how real learning happens. I still have a few questions left, which I'll finish tomorrow. That wraps up day 19 of the Undegreed journey. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
The network awakens. Intelligence takes form. Undegreed. The signature remains.